Good evening and welcome to Your Idaho, produced by the JimStatePatriot.com, an Idaho-based electronic newsletter. My name is Bob Neugebauer, and my guest for tonight is Representative Judy Boyle of the 9th District. Our topic for this evening will be the legislative perspective on the Second Amendment rights and gun bills this legislative session. Good evening, Judy, and how are you today?
Fine. How are you doing?
Good. I'd kind of like to get your perspective on the campus carry bill that was just signed into law.
Well, I'm very happy that we passed it and the governor signed it.
Did you have a lot of trouble getting this through the House?
Not so much the House. The Senate maybe was a little more questionable. That's why we started it over there.
Now, wasn't this a bill that's been hanging around for a couple of years that you've been trying to get through?
Yes, that was House Bill 222. It passed the House, overwhelming, and it was stuck in the Senate.
What was the reason for that?
I think some senators didn't understand exactly what we needed, where we were going with that, and so we tried again after a couple years, learned about what their objections were, talked to the universities to see what could help them, and tried it again.
So you actually talked to the universities and the administrators about what was going on, and still there was this big brouhaha about, we really don't want guns on campus, but they knew it was coming.
And they also knew that they had guns on campus.
So why was there this big mess about why we couldn't have guns on campus, and they needed more security and they needed all kinds of money so they could pay for that security? What happened there?
I think they were just trying to make a point that they didn't want it there. And if you remember in the Senate, one of the university presidents stood up and said this will cost millions of dollars, and that he had called down to Utah and talked to that president, who told him the biggest cost was the lawsuits that occurred after Utah had campus carry. What he did not tell in that committee hearing was that the universities in Utah were the ones that instigated all the lawsuits, which they lost.
So they spent the public's money so they could institute a lawsuit. They knew they couldn't win, and they were thinking about doing the same thing here. Am I correct?
I don't know what they were thinking about doing here. I guess we'll see.
Kind of curious, why was Chief Masterson and the administrators working together so vehemently against this bill when the Fraternal Order of Police were actually backing it?
Well, I guess because the Fraternal Order of Police are the cops on the street and they know what's going on, where the administrators are administrators.
Was this more political on Masterson's part?
I believe it was.
You think he's seeking a higher office at some point in time?
I don't know about that. I think he was trying to make a point as well.
I see. I guess you could be called the Second Amendment lady of the House because most of the bills at one point in time get through your desk or are in your desk. Could you give the audience an idea of how many gun bills that you actually looked at this year?
Well, at one point I had at least a dozen.
A dozen bills.
The year before there were a lot more than that. Many of them, though, were similar, and that's why the House leadership appointed me to try to bring those bills together and merge them so we didn't have quite so many.
So you basically put these bills, which ones were going to be brought up this time. Is that correct? You presenting them to them?
I just tell people work on them.
Okay.
And see which ones we could actually get a hearing on, perhaps pass. And you can't have too many bills at once or you end up with nothing.
So we wound up passing 2 gun bills. One was just signed into law yesterday, I believe, or day before. And the campus carry bill, out of maybe 6 or 7 that were real bills there?
Yes.
Okay. So the governor says we're a strong gun rights state. And the legislators all want to pass these Second Amendment gun rights bills, yet we only get 2 out of 7 passed in a legislative session. Sounds kind of like they're not telling us the truth.
Well, you have to educate people. And the campus carry one was huge. That was a giant bill. That took a lot of work and many, many hours and a lot of education. And the other one was what we called Son of 219. And 219 last year we tried to pass. It flew through the House and again was stuck in the Senate. So I worked all summer and fall with the Senate leadership so we could help them understand what we were doing and why we were trying to do this.
Now, was that 1332 that just passed, that was just signed into law?
Yes.
Could you give us a little background on that bill? Because I do remember that 219 bill that Representative Patterson brought forward in the last legislative session, and if I remember correctly, that was the big argument that ensued between he and Rini in the fact that he was claiming that Rini was lobbying with public money. I think that's the way it went.
Well, there was a lot more to it than that.
I'm sure, and I'm sure that had a lot to do with the fact that the sheriff works with the federal government and the federal agencies. When they have a bust, they get to keep some of the goods. That's part of the booty. So that's part of the money goes into their till. But I noticed that that was not in this bill. That was a loophole left out of this bill.
The other bill did not talk about forfeitures either.
It did not?
No.
Then why was there such a big problem with the bill last year, although the governor had to do this emergency signing this year?
Well, I don't know if it was an emergency signing.
Well, it says emergency right on the top of the article. Nullification of federal gun laws.
Well, the bill last year came about because President Obama had signed a lot of executive orders, and no one knew for sure what all those executive orders were going to say. And we are very fearful here, of course, that D.C. will come and try to take our guns. So Representative Patterson came up with this bill, and it was a very good bill. But it was one that was not easily understood by many people. And half of law enforcement supported it, the other half didn't. It's kind of like campus carry.
So you had the law enforcement officers, as maybe you did here with the Fraternal Order of Police, backing a bill like that?
Yes.
But you had the sheriff and maybe the chief of police who were not backing it. Is that correct?
Now, I don't know about the chief of police. I think they were neutral last year on that bill. But I know Sheriff Rainey was adamantly opposed, although other sheriffs were adamantly supportive of it. But the association then did not take a position. Fraternal Order of Police, they did take a position and they supported it.
So when we're talking about putting legislation through, we really find out that some of these officers that are in charge of the various departments can have an awful lot to say in terms of whether these bills get passed or not.
Well, they both got passed.
Finally.
In spite of.
After a lot of work and a lot of hard talking, I'm sure. Let's touch base on this bill that was killed in the Senate. And that bill had to do with the concealed carry for elected officials. And I was kind of interested in talking about this for a couple of reasons. There was a lot of pushback on Russ Fulcher, who's running for governor, on this bill because he voted against it. And you had like 67% or 67 people in the House who voted for it. And I had a hard time reconciling both of these votes. But Russ voted against this, from what I understand, because what it did was take more constitutional rights away from that particular group of elected officials, and what he really wants to see is true constitutional carry. Is that where he was going with that?
That's my understanding of it, yes. And in the House, that was a leadership bill, which meant most of us didn't want to vote against a leadership bill. And we decided the Senate could do whatever they wanted with it anyway.
So you're telling me that Speaker Bedke brought this bill forward?
Well, it didn't have his name on it.
It didn't have his name on it, but we all know that he was part and parcel of bringing this out. I know that for a fact because I've talked to several representatives in the House. My point here is, why would somebody bring out a bill like that in an election year like this, after going through all of the problems with Mark Patterson, which he was involved with, all right, along with several other members of the legislature, and try to push something like this forward when he knew he couldn't get it through the Senate? Was it just to show them that he had control of the House?
Well, I don't know that he knew he couldn't get it through the Senate. I think he was surprised.
Well, I think the amazing part was that Senator Stennett and Senator Work, who voted against campus carry, so they didn't want the kids to have guns, but voted to kill this bill so they could carry their guns.
Well, I don't know that either one of them carry a gun, and I'm not sure what their reasons were for that. But I do know that Senator Fulcher believes that everyone should have the right to carry a gun as long as they're not a felon. And that's what constitutional carry is. That's what we wanted to do in 1990 when we passed our first carry conceal on the shall issue.
What do you think it's going to take to get constitutional carry through here in Idaho?
Probably a new governor.
A new governor. You think that might change it? Or would we have to change a lot of the representatives too?
Some of them, but you just have to work with them so they understand the issue is a lot of the problem here.
Sometimes I have to think that many of the legislators that we have, and 30 of them were new from the last election, still haven't gotten their feet wet and still don't understand what's in most of these bills that come through. And I want to bring something else up, and that's called the Castle Law. There was a bill that was supposed to have been brought up in the last legislative session. They were talking about it. It was created to be brought up again in this legislative session. That's the one that kind of protects your own domain, your own home, that allows you to shoot somebody if they come into your house in a threatening manner. Am I correct?
That's true, but in Idaho we have very good case law that does protect us. And we plan on bringing that through next year. We had hoped this year, but the campus carry thing took so much time and it was so involved that we honestly did not have time to work on another giant bill like this.
Do you think they're actually going to install metal detectors at the college?
Well, I don't know exactly how they would do that when campuses are so spread out and there's so many entry points. I think they're just trying to scare people and taxpayers, and there was no sense in them doing any of that.
Okay. With this Law 1332 that was just signed by the governor, now that would prohibit officers from enforcing future federal mandates and regulations, but not previous ones. Am I correct?
Well, the previous ones don't violate our Constitution.
Okay. So isn't this bill similar to the 219 that was killed last year?
This is very, very similar. Yes.
The only thing I find in this bill that I didn't find in the last one is that loophole that allows the sheriff to participate in enforcement proceedings with federal drug and gang enforcement, which allows him to have that loophole in there. Do you think that loophole is a dangerous loophole to let him have?
No, I don't, because those gangs and the drug task force are for specific things. They're not to just go round up guns from lawful citizens.
I hope you're right about that one.
Well, it better be right, or we will fix this again. And all the sheriffs know exactly what this means. It was spelled out over and over again.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to wait and see what happens, Chair. Let's talk a little bit about the Obama administration, because these are the guys that are trying to get all of our guns. They are trying to get mental health data from the states. Now, of course, we have a state exchange, and that any data that's put into that state exchange actually goes to the federal government, because we don't actually have a state exchange.
Correct.
And I'm still trying to wonder why the governor could nullify federal gun laws but couldn't nullify Obamacare.
We could have nullified Obamacare. We have nullified the Real ID.
That's correct. We did nullify the Real ID. But we needed to get this Obamacare through and the state health care exchange through. Why?
Well, I wasn't in support of it, that's for sure. And ours is the only Republican state with a Republican governor who did a state exchange, which is not a true state exchange. The feds are still in control.
True, and we're spending $70 million of federal money to build that state exchange over the next year. Okay. The president has put a new person up for Surgeon General who wants to be able to ask about guns when you meet with your doctor, to ask whether you have guns because he considers it a health problem. How do you feel about this?
Well, I think when he comes up for confirmation, he definitely should be voted down. And I know the various gun organizations in Washington are pushing very hard to be sure he is not confirmed.
And the NRA, I know, has pushed very hard to keep him from getting in there.
Yes.
Okay. Just a few more things. I want to get back again to the healthcare exchange because it is basically the outlet that all of our information goes into and gets right into the federal, basically their hub of information, and they distribute it wherever they want within their hub. Do you think that the way they wrote the bill for the exchange will protect that information from dissemination within the various agencies of the federal government? Or do you think that's just gone and it's in there and people need to worry about it?
I don't think it protects your privacy in the least.
So they put this particular section into the bill to protect our privacy, but it doesn't do anything.
No, because the federal government is still in control, and they tell the state exchange, these are the data set of information you will give to us. We have no control in there. None.
That's something I've been saying for some time, but nobody seems to believe me. So now you're hearing it from the horse's mouth. I didn't mean that derogatorily. If I was talking to Butch, I could say the horse's mouth.
Well, it was brought up a lot in the debates as well. Everyone is worried about this. And many of us believe that this state law is unconstitutional because the legislature gave away their authority to an unelected board, and we have no oversight over them. None.
Well, we've already seen what happened with that health exchange board when they tried to put through a contract with Frank Chan for $325,000, which basically was a no-bid contract. So I don't have a lot of faith in the people running that exchange board, just like I don't have a lot of faith in the people who put the exchange together. But I was more concerned about people putting their information in there, especially veterans or people who have been in the service. They got PTSD, they've recovered, but then again they've gone for mental health treatments. And all of a sudden the government has their hands on that information. I guess I have to caution people. I've never been asked that since I've been going to Medicare doctors. But I know some of my friends who have been asked that question.
And how I would answer that if I was anyone, I would say it is none of your business if I have a gun.
Well, that's
Period.
true. That's true.
Because it isn't. It's no one's business.
Do you think it's going to be a little easier to get some of this legislation through on the gun rights bills in the next session, like the Castle Law? Or...
We hope so.
But you don't see constitutional carry coming anytime soon?
We're going to try. You know, again, we have to educate people. They're fearful, those that don't carry or haven't been around guns. They don't understand that the gun is not what causes the action. It's the person that causes the action.
They understand that guns are there to protect them?
No, they do not understand that.
So the only thing they look at is the harmful effects of guns.
And again, it isn't the gun that does this. It's
Correct.
the person pulling the trigger.
I agree with you. And what we have here is a group of people who are just basically uneducated about guns.
No, because they didn't grow up with them.
True. I presume you grew up when you were young and you had guns?
Guns have always been in my house. My dad and my grandpa taught me how to handle a gun when I was very young. I did the same with my kids and my grandkids.
Well, you know, being number 32nd in Guns and Ammo magazine in terms of gun rights is not a good position to be in to try to get jobs to come here from the gun manufacturers or the ammunition manufacturers.
But again, that was one magazine, and when we ask why, they can't really point to anything. I'm not sure that is a very good survey. And I've asked the NRA, and they agree this is not a good service.
How does the NRA rate us as far as a gun rights state?
They think we're fantastic.
Really?
Yes.
Well, that makes me feel a little bit better. Where would they rank us if they had to, do you think?
Well, I don't know. I'll ask them.
I would appreciate that. Next time we get you back, maybe you can tell us where we actually do rank.
I do know, though, that the campus carry bill, that advanced Idaho's rating a lot in the eyes of many, many people. And right now they're trying to use our law and pass some similar in Alaska. And Alaska's universities are following in line with Idaho's to fight it.
I think it's actually a good law. I was happy to see it passed. My concern is that the administrators will try to fight this in a court of law, although I don't see where they have any constitutional standing whatsoever.
They don't, but they'll try to make it very, very costly, put other things off limits. I was just told that BSU has now decided that their student union building classifies as a public entertainment center, and so therefore carry conceal is not allowed there. They know perfectly well that we were talking about the Taco Bell Arena and the stadium.
So are these basically already intrusions upon the bill?
Yes, I believe so.
What will we do about those?
Well, I guess what we can do is a new law next year to amend it to make it extremely plain to the university presidents what is and what is not a public facility. The entertainment outside.
So it's all a matter of interpretation?
It is.
And of course our Attorney General hasn't sat down and interpreted anything yet, is that correct?
I believe he has not.
I see. So we really need to get a good interpreter.
That helps.
And then we can help all of our representatives understand things better too. I'm just toying with you. When you take a look at Idaho as a whole, and you see we've got, I don't know, a real smattering of campuses all around the state. They were talking about having these schools inside the colleges or next door to the colleges. Are they going to, and that's a federal bill, okay, where you cannot have a gun near a grammar school or a high school. Is that going to curtail people from carrying guns in those areas?
No, actually what the law says is if there is a building and part of it is a university, part of it is a public school, so a K through 12, the part where the K through 12 is cannot have a gun.
Okay, but any place else you can carry?
Yes.
What about the CWI area where they have offices that are rented? Do they have to get permission from the people who own those office buildings?
If the university owns the building, is that what you mean?
No, a lot of their space is leased.
Oh, CWI leases.
Yes.
Yes. The private property owner would be the one to decide.
So they may not be able to carry there either.
Possibly.
Okay. I think we've got a pretty good, clear understanding of that. How do you see the race for governor pairing up here in the gun rights arena? Do you think this is going to be an important issue? Is that one of the reasons maybe we got some of these bills through?
That's exactly why we got them through.
So without an election year, we may not have gotten any of these through.
That's correct.
I know the governor took 3 or 4 days to sign the campus carry bill. Was he just thinking about it, or did he have some reservations?
I have no idea. I just know he had grave reservations on the bill that we had a few years ago, House Bill 222.
And this was pretty similar?
This was very similar.
So do you think that as we get closer to the primary, that the gun rights will become more and more of an issue?
It should. It definitely should.
And will that happen with a lot of our legislators that are also running in primary elections?
Possibly.
Okay, we talked to a lot of different gun rights organizations. How do you feel about the militia?
The militia as in the Second Amendment, or?
The militias that we have here, we have 3 or 4 of them right here in this area. How do you feel about having them out there?
I don't have a problem with them in the least. They're there to protect us.
Have you been out with any of these groups? Have you talked to any of these groups at all?
I've talked to a few people who are in them, but I have not been with them.
Just curious, because the sheriffs in some of the counties around here seem to be a little bit remiss that we have these militias, and the fact that they are out doing maneuvers and they are out learning about how to use ham radios and how to communicate with each other if there's ever some kind of a disaster here. But I would consider that to be a good thing, would you not?
Absolutely, it's a good thing. And those sheriffs who have problems with it, maybe they should talk to the sheriffs who are encouraging it in other parts of Idaho.
Speaking of sheriffs, I understand we only have 19 what they would consider 19 constitutional sheriffs in Idaho. How do you feel about that?
Well, that's better than it was a couple years ago.
You mean we had a lot less then?
Yes, we did. I think we only had 11 last year.
So we're gaining ground here.
Yes, we are.
We not only have gun rights bills, but we also have more constitutional sheriffs coming forward.
Yes.
Well, I have to tell you, it's been a pleasure having you here tonight.
Well, thank you very much.
And I hope that we'll have an opportunity to get together at another time. We will have Alexandria Kincaid and Ryan Jenks to talk about the legal aspects of the Second Amendment within the next week or so. So we hope you'll tune in and listen to them to get the legal aspects of the Second Amendment here in Idaho. I'd like to thank the technicians and the staff of TVC-TV for making this broadcast possible. They're a nonprofit organization, and if you wish to donate, you can do so by going to their website at www.tvctvonline.org. Good night, Idaho.